Likutei Sichos, Chelek Yotes Vayelech Aleph. In this Sikha, the Rabbi is going to explain the connection between Nitzavim and Vayelech, and how nevertheless Vayelech is on a higher level than Nitzavim, similar to the fact that the Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur have a common theme, and yet Yom Kippur is on a higher level than Rosh Hashanah. That when it comes to the Sedris, the Rasag, the Psadia Goin is talking about the fact that there's 53 Parshias. You'll see in a second the reason he calls it 53 is because he considers Nitzavim and Vayelech the same Parsha, and yet there's less than 53 weeks a year. So he's arranging the schedule of how to get all the Sedris into 1 year. So he says, of the 53 Parshias of the Torah, there is a Parsha Mischalekes L'Shtayim. There's one Parsha that's dividable into two, V'nikras b'shtei Shabbos im Yestedech Pekach, and can be read on two separate Shabbosos if there is a need for it. V'hi atem Nitzavim anachlekes b'Vayelech Moshe. This refers to Parshas Nitzavim, which would be divided by Vayelech Moshe. That from Vayelech Moshe, which is Parshas Vayelech as we know it, would be read on the following Shabbos. So this is what the Rasag says. Now, going. Now, from the Diuk Haloshen Parsha Mischalekes L'Shtayim, if you focus on the words he uses, he says it's a Parsha that is divided into two. Nit wie sagt, but the andere Sedres HaMischabros, Shmoyne mehen mistarfois lipaomim, Shtayim biyachad, v'nikrois ba'arba Shabbos. Unlike the term he uses by the other Mechubarim or Mechubaris, combined Sedris, where he says you have 8 Sedris that would be combined and read in 4 weeks. Now, the truth is there's more than 8, but in one given year, you don't need more than 4. You don't have more than 4 extras. So the most you have to double up, most I have to combine is 8 and turn them into 4. But the way he uses it is he says there's 8 parshas, which you would sometimes combine and turn them into 4. Here he says you have one parsha that's being divided into 2 sections, being read on 2 Shabbos. So for the fact that he uses a different lashon, a different terminology by Nitzavim Vayelech is muchach. This shows us, this proves to us, as Nitzavim and Vayelech seine be'etzem ein Sedre, that in truth Nitzavim and Vayelech are one and the same Sedre. Nor lepa'amim zetelt men ir av tzvei, but sometimes it is divided into 2. Nit wie die andere Shmeine Sedres am Eschabretz, was die mitztarfe seine be'etzem tzvei bazundere, Shtayim Sedres, nor lepa'amim leint men beide zusammen in ein Shabbos, unlike the other ones that are actually 2 separate parshias, or Sedris, that you would sometimes read 2 Parshias, 2 Sedris in the same week. Here, it's one Sedra that is divided sometimes into 2 separate weeks. Parenthetically speaking, Azoyezech Mashma von dem Simen was wird gebracht in Tur v'Shulchan Aruch, Pas Bag HaMelech. We can derive the same concept from the Tur and Shulchan Aruch, which use a siman about the Parshias Nitzavim Vayelech from the words Pas Bag HaMelech. Pas Bag HaMelech is from the Sefer Daniel, and it's referring to the food of the king. In other words, that Daniel said, give us simple food, and give the people of the young people of the palace Pas Bag HaMelech, food of the king, and we'll see what we look like after a little while. So the siman is Bag HaMelech Pas Vayelech. Bag is Beis Gimel Monday, Tuesday. As when Rosh Hashanah HaMelech is Chol b'Yom Beis Ad b'Yom Gimel b'Shavua. When Rosh Hashanah, which is hinted to in the word HaMelech, falls out on Bag, Monday or Tuesday of the week, Leit men Vayelech Bazunda, then Vayelech will be read separately. The Magen Avraham touched us up. The Magen Avraham explains what's the siman. Pas Vayelech Pirush miloshen pasois oisopitim. Pas over here literally would mean bread, but here it comes from the word you break off a piece of the bread. Shemachalkim nitzavim vayelech l'shtayim, that we divide nitzavim vayelech into 2 sections. Pas is for lashon pasois oisopitim, Pas over here comes from the word pasois oisa, that you're breaking it, mitzebrecht ein chala v'rakik of telin, you're breaking apart one chala, or one matzah, one kichel, into parts, as pas vayelech, as mebrecht up, metelt up vayelech from nitzavim, you're breaking off vayelech from nitzavim. So again, the fact that he uses the siman, pasois oisa pitim, you're breaking off a piece of bread, you're breaking off a piece of the parsha from the seemingly one parsha, implies that here too in the Torah Shulchan Aruch they are looking at nitzavim vayelech as one sedra. Just sometimes it's read in two Shabbosis. Since every sedra has its own theme, which makes it separate, which gives it a distinction from all the other sedres, is move on as nitzavim vayelech haben beide ein teichen klali. It would be understood that if nitzavim vayelech are really one parsha, then they have one overarching theme. Das heißt nicht, nur is in sehr erfahren auf gewissen Nekudim Mishutefes. Was zu lieb dem kennen sie nicht haben werden Yachad. Not only do they have a common idea, a common theme, that because of which they would be able to be combined. It's just like all the other combinable sedres have something that connects them. But more than that, Nitzavim Vayelech, since they're really one parsha, they both contain one and the same theme in each of Nitzavim and Vayelech. Afal Pikein, nevertheless, from them, since at the end of the day, sometimes we do read Parshas Vayelech in a separate Shabbos, is move on as zusammen in der Mit was beide sedres haben ein Teichen. It's understood that together with the fact that the two sedres have the same theme, is von deswegen voran achilek wieder in gitzich aroisten jeden von die zwei sedres. There must be a difference in how that theme is expressed in each of the sedres respectively. Und noch mehr, wie bald das Parshas Vayelech kommt nach Parshas Nitzavim, and even more than that. Since Parshas Vayelech comes after Nitzavim, darf man sagen, as in Vayelech is done ilu in dem inyan of Nitzavim. We must conclude that in Vayelech there is an advantage, there is a greater depth in whatever this topic is over Nitzavim. Biz an ilu sheli ba'erach, to the point that it's an incomparable advantage. Was the Rebbe read sie gelehnt lipa'amim and abazundin in Shabbos, which because of that she is read sometimes, or it is read sometimes on a totally different Shabbos. In other words, even though they carry the same theme, because really essentially they're one parsha, but from the fact that we divide them implies that there also is something unique in each of the parshias, and Vayelech, since it comes later, is much greater than Nitzavim, or has a greater aspect of the theme than Nitzavim. So in Seif Beis, he's going to begin by telling us the fact that Nitzavim and Vayelech are going to parallel Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. In order to understand the theme of Nitzavim and Vayelech and the difference between Nitzavim and Vayelech, we'll understand it by looking at Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, since Nitzavim is always read before Rosh Hashanah, and Vayelech, when it's separated from Nitzavim, is read before Yom Kippur. That's what he's going to discuss in Seif Beis. Parsha Nitzavim leit ben alle mol far Rosh Hashanah. Parsha Nitzavim is always read before Rosh Hashanah. Wie der Alter Rebbe is mevayer the shaykhs von hat Nitzavim mayim kulcham v'gimer to Rosh Hashanah. Now the Alter Rebbe explains in Likutei Torah the connection between Atem Nitzavim mayim kulcham to Rosh Hashanah. We'll come on Seif Gimel, which will be touched upon in the Sikha in Seif Gimel. Shenkin Parshas Vayelech was be'ezi is abgeteilt from Parshas Nitzavim. Conversely, Parshas Vayelech, when it is separated from Nitzavim, wird sie gelehnt in dem Shabbos nach Rosh Hashanah und Far Yom Kippur, it becomes read. It is read on the Shabbos after Rosh Hashanah, but before Yom Kippur. Und das is Aichacha, as the Teichen from Parshas Vayelech is Shayach Yom Kippur, which this shows us that the theme of Vayelech connects to Yom Kippur. So the theme of Rosh Hashanah, the theme of Nitzavim connects to Rosh Hashanah, the theme of Vayelech connects to Yom Kippur. Ubemele is there beer in the Tzvei Nekudas Anal when it gets to Nitzavim Vayelech. So to explain these two aspects of Nitzavim Vayelech, Aleph, as you have an Ein Teichen, on the one hand they have the same theme, und Beis as zusammen der Mietet Parshas Vayelech and Ilya Parshas Nitzavim, that at the same time Vayelech has an advantage or a deeper message over Nitzavim. That Zayin verstandig later as Bara, as Eich in dem Inyan von Rosh Hashanah v'Yom Kippur, seinen dort die zwei Nekudas Amuris. We'll understand it by introducing the fact that also Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur have these two aspects. That on the one hand they're the same theme, on the other hand in Yom Kippur you're going to find an advantage over Rosh Hashanah. And he's going to explain. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are an Inyan, ein Hamshech. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are the same idea. They are the same Hamshech. Bees as Yom Kippur wird angerufen Rosh Hashanah, so much so that Yom Kippur is called Rosh Hashanah. In Yecheskel, it says Bereish Hashanah be'asar lachedesh, on the 10th day of the year, of the month, which is Rosh Hashanah. So we see from here that Yom Kippur is referred to as Rosh Hashanah. So they're the same thing. They have the same theme. On the other hand, Yom Kippur has an advantage over Rosh Hashanah. But Rosh Hashanah and Rosh Hashanah is the inscription, and Yom Kippur is the seal, is the signing. As Yom Kippur is the Gemara v'chaysim for Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur is the culmination and the completion of Rosh Hashanah. So whatever is accomplished Rosh Hashanah, it needs the finality of Yom Kippur to bring it to fruition. Now, before we go on, he's going to bring a dugma in halacha where we see that Yom Kippur is the conclusion and culmination of Rosh Hashanah. Und wie der spiegelt sich auch up in halacha, this is reflected in halacha. Yom Kippur wird angerufen Rosh Hashanah. Another reason why Yom Kippur is referred to as Rosh Hashanah, because in the year of Yovel, Yom Kippur is when the Yovel year begins with regards to the freeing of the slaves. Und der Din is, as the Yitziyah von Avodim Lechedes beYovel is in an Eifen, was mit Rosh Hashanah ad Yom Kippurim leyayu Avodim niftarim levateyan v'le mishtabdim ladeineyam. So the Din is that how did the freedom of the slaves work? That from Rosh Hashanah till Yom Kippur, they didn't leave home yet. They stayed in the homes of their masters, but they did not serve the masters. They were free from serving the masters, but they were not yet free to go home. Kivan shegiya Yom Kippurim, once Yom Kippur came, niftaru avodim levatei, and then the slaves were allowed to go home. Zet bin dem tzvei nekudas. So we see over here two aspects. Number one, that inyan hayitziyah lechedes is a nekuda, that both Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are part of the process of the eved, of the slave, going free. On the other hand, is din nekuda gufa eingeteilt in zwei zmanim. This freedom, this aspect of freedom, is divided into two time periods. The ascholas hayitziyah, the beginning of the leaving, the beginning of the freedom. Loy mishtabdin, and at this point they are not yet enslaved anymore, is in Rosh Hashanah. That begins Rosh Hashanah. Und the Gemara Yitziyah, Niftarim Levatayim, the end, the completion of their freedom, when they're actually able to leave home, but thus is their Ikir, which is obviously the most important part of the freedom, is B'Yom Kippur. This happens on Yom Kippur. So we see again that Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur share a theme in the fact that both are part of the process of the freedom of the slaves, but at the same time, Rosh Hashanah is only the beginning of it, but the main event and the completion of it is on Yom Kippur. Similarly, in the Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the way we experience it, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are both considered Rosh Hashanah, and they're both part of the judgment of the beginning of the year. But Rosh Hashanah is the beginning, the writing, the inscription, and Yom Kippur is the completion, the conclusion, when it's signed and sealed. So now, in Siv Gimel, he's going to explain that Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is about crowning Hashem as king, which is accomplished through Achdus. So the common theme of Nitzav and Vayelech is the idea of Achdus. So we started by saying that Nitzav and Vayelech have the same theme, but in different ways. We compared that to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, that they too have the same theme, but then again, Yom Kippur is on a higher level than Rosh Hashanah. And now we're going to, in order to understand the common theme of Rosh Hashanah, of Nitzav and Vayelech, we're going to see it that the theme is Achdus, which is connected to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, which is the Avodah of Tamlichuni Aleichem, of crowning Hashem as king. The Shaykhs van Atu Nitzav Mayim v'Gemer to Rosh Hashanah, the connection of Nitzav Mayim to Rosh Hashanah is that Alter Rebbe Mevar, Alter Rebbe explains, Rosh Hashanah is the Zman for Tam Lichuni Aleichem, because Rosh Hashanah is the time when we crown Hashem as king. Hashem says, make me king upon you. How does this accomplish the Tam Lichuni Aleichem? How does it happen that we accomplish that the Eivesher should be our king? So the end of the pasuk Vahi B'Shurun Melech is B'Yisasef Rashi when the heads of the people gather. Then kulam misasfim yachad liyes lachadim keechad, when everybody gathers together as one. But this is that inyan achtos von Eden, which this is the idea of unity of Klal Yisrael. That with Shas the Yidden are ba'achtos. This is how we crown Hashem as king. Und das ist der Teichen Klali von Atun Tzav Mayim Kulchem Lefnei Hashem Lekechem. This is the underlying theme of Parashas Nitzavim, when you are all standing before Hashem, your Hashem. From the heads of the tribes down to the water carriers, as Nitkukin Dikav Dichilukim Adregis was eine Faran by Yidden. That regardless of the various different levels that exist amongst the Yidden, Shtein ze aber kulchem alle v'eins lifnei Hashem Elekechem, when it comes to Rosh Hashanah, they all stand as one before Hashem. So the idea of Rosh Hashanah, which is Kabbalah, Samalchus or Tamlichuni Aleichem, is accomplished through Achdus, and this is the theme of Nitzavim. Derinyan, the Achdus von Eden, and this idea, the Achdus of Klal Yisrael, is from parts of Vayelech, is also the overarching theme of Vayelech. He said that Zachan mit Vayelech Moshe el Kol Yisrael. Was the diuk alashon Kol Yisrael meant to madgezain as is ein aliche und dibur alle Yidden b'shaveh. The parsha, the Seder of Vayelech begins. Moshe went to all of the Yidden, implying that he went one going and one speaking to all the Yidden equally. Und eich besima said der gesagt, vayidaber Moshe be'oznei kol Kal Yisrael as divrei ashira v'gomer. That Moshe spoke into the ears of the entire congregation of the Yidden the words of this Shira. So ganz Kal Yisrael ke'echad, to the entire call, to the entire people as one. So also in Vayelech you also see the idea of Achdus. So from this we would conclude that the theme that combines Nitzavim and Vayelech, the theme that connects Nitzavim and Vayelech, is the theme of Achdus of Klal Yisrael. Nitzavim hayom kulchem lefnei Hashem Elekechem, Vayelech Moshe el Kol Yisrael, Vayidaber Moshe b'oznei kol Kal Yisrael. That is the idea of Achdus. Now, before we continue with the connection of Nitzavim Vayelech, or the distinction of Nitzavim Vayelech, we're going to, in Siv Dalid, we're going to focus on the fact that also, not just in the words that introduce Vayelech, but also in the mitzvahs of Vayelech, which is the mitzvah of Hakel and the mitzvah of writing a Sefer Torah, you also see in that this theme of Achdus. That's Siv Dalet. Noch mehr, additionally, eich die mitzvahs von der Sedre, Hakel und Ksiva Sefer Torah, seine Nazelcha, was in Zeh is Mudgish die Achdus von Eden, also the mitzvahs of this part of Sedre of Vayelech. Namely, Hakel and writing a Sefer Torah are also mitzvahs that underscore and emphasize the unity of Yidden. The mitzvah von Hakel esa'am nemt arum alle Yidden gleichen Unterschied. The mitzvah of Hakel encompasses all of the Yidden equally, without differentiation. Ha'anoshim, va'anoshim, va'atav, v'gercha, v'gemer, men, women, and children, the ger, everybody. We don't find this type of achdus by any other mitzvah, that it encompasses all the Yidden together, all types, all differences. Und der Far Vertes angerufen Hakel, and that's why the mitzvah is called Hakel. Weil der Musik von Kol, Badait, the idea of Kol, symbolizes as the Farzamulte seine nit nur Atziru von Dibui Protim, that the gathered are not just a combination of multiple individuals, multiple details. There's a Zainen vereinigt in ein Nayer Metzias Kol, they become one, in one new unit, the Kol. In other words, you can have a lot of people in one place, and they are just a bunch of individuals in the same place, or you could have a Hakel, a Kol. A Kol is a unit of oneness. It's made up of a bunch of details, but it's a one thing. It's one unit of one. So the idea of Hakel is to take all of the Yidden from wherever background, whatever differentiation they come from, and bring them together as one unit. Der Mitwert verantwortet Tmiya, and while we're on this topic, this will answer a question in the minion von Hakel. Wo die Kriya beteire der sein durch ein Melech. The Kriya of the Torah on the Hakel, when all the Yidden would gather on Sukkot of the 8th year, the year after Shemitah. So one of the parts of the ceremony was that the Melech would stand on a bima in the Beis Hamikdash and he would read portions of the Torah. How do we know this? Out of 30 references, the Gemara Soita, where it says Parshas Melech Ketzad. Rashi in our Parsha says, it says in Parsha Tikras HaTorah Azos, Rashi says Hamelech HaYakira. So the king was the one who would read the Torah at the Hakel gathering. The Lechera, learning Torah mit alle Yidden, is a Zach was Shaykh to Sanhedrin. Learning Torah, teaching Torah, is the job of the Sanhedrin. So the Kriya should have been done either by the head of the Sanhedrin or by the head of the Bezdin. So why is the Melech reading the Torah? Nor the beer in them. And the explanation is as follows. In Torah and in there's two aspects when it comes to Torah. Aleph, limud Torah, learning in Torah. Versus negeya der inyan havana v'hasaga, where what's relevant is, what's important is comprehension. Was in dem seinen doch Chilukim zwischen Hoshechem, Sheftechem, v'Gemer, und die andere Sugim b'Shevim Echal, which would create differences between the heads of the tribes versus all the other different levels down to the water carrier. Because when you're talking about comprehension, you have people that are able to comprehend and understand Torah better, and people that have a harder time understanding Torah. So when it comes to comprehension, to Havana v'Hasaga, there's various levels. There's another aspect in Torah, which is Kriya B'Torah, learning, reading Torah. Was Kriya B'Torah in Torah Shebiksav is nicht verbunden mit Havana v'Hasaga. When it comes to reading Torah, it's not about necessarily comprehension. And that's why, Lamashal, when a person reads Torah Shebiksav, even though he doesn't understand what he's saying, he makes Birchas HaTorah, because it's considered learning Torah, just saying the words. And therefore, this is connected to all Yidden. This is applicable to all Yidden equally. When it comes to saying words, everybody who says the words, it doesn't matter how little you understand or how much you understand, the words are the words. So you have learning Torah, which is comprehension, which has various levels. Then you have reading Torah, which is not about comprehension, and everyone is equal. Now we're going to answer the question based on what we just said. That Hakel is about creating a new unit of oneness of all Yidden together. Since by Hakel all the Yidden become one in one entity, it's verstandig, it's understood as demult is negia der inyan in Torah in welchen es gleichen sich aus alle Yidden. That then what is applicable now, the aspect of Torah in which everybody is equal, which is Kriya and Torah Shebiksav, which is reading, not so much understanding. Unachmar b'lashon Rambam, even more so, the Rambam says that a person should stand be'emo v'yira, v'gila bira'ada, kiyem shenitna by b'sina, that when the king reads the Torah, he should stand with fear and awe, and gila is actually joy, bira'ada is trembling, as if it is the day that Torah was given in Sinai. But by our Sinai, it included all the Yidden equally. Therefore, the Rambam continues, he should see himself as if he's right now being commanded to do what the Torah says, and he's hearing it directly from Hashem. So this aspect, the aspect of Torah that you're hearing it, the words, as if it's Har Sinai, where all the Yidden are the same. It's not about comprehension. It's about hearing the words. This aspect of Torah belongs to the king. Warum die Unterwerfenkeit von dem ganzen Volk zum Melech is nicht mit der Havana v'Hasaga. The subjugation of the people to the king is not because they understand, nor is it etzem mitzias und alles was sie haben gehört zum Melech, because they themselves and all their possessions belong to the king. But the Rebbe is as a ma'achad and a mitzias, and the king is the one who unites them in one entity. At his leiv kol kahal Yisrael, he's the heart of the kahal, the call of Yidden. This was elaborated on in the Sichim, this Chelek, in Parshas Shoftim a few weeks ago. High time is der was is keder batera, and therefore he reads the Torah. Tutuf by eden dem inyan and Torah was is hecher von asaga, und is beshava begans kal Yisrael. He accomplishes by the Yidden this aspect of Torah which is beyond comprehension and is equal by everyone. So now that we understand that the idea of Hakel is Achdus, the Achdus in a form that you're taking all the Yidden and you're seeing them as one without focusing on the different levels, then you understand why it's the king who reads the Torah, because the king unites everyone together. He is their heart and they belong to him. And that's why the king reads the Torah and doesn't teach the Torah, because we're talking about the aspect of Torah in which everyone is united, that is higher than comprehension. Also, the second mitzvah of Vayelech is nicht kein inyan von limud Torah nor ksiva sefer Torah. It's not about learning Torah, it's about writing a Torah, it's about the words. Was das is madgish die Sheiches von Eden zu Torah, was ist bei alle gleich, al derech hanal benegea zu kriyas Torah b'hakel. Which underscores this idea that every Yid is connected to Torah, just like we said before with regards to the kriyas Torah b'hakel, that it connects to every Yid because it's not about comprehension. Also, writing a Torah also connects all Yidden as one. So now we understand that the Nitzavim and Vayelech are the theme of Achdus. And not only do we see it in the first pasuk of the parsha or the last pasuk of the parsha, but the mitzvahs in the parshas Vayelech are also on the theme of Achdus, and not just Achdus like bringing people together, but Achdus means creating a unity where everyone becomes one and we do not focus on the differences. So now we're going to go back to our discussion about Nitzavim and Vayelech. And we have to understand what we now that we know the common theme of Nitzavim Vayelech, that it's Achdus. We now have to see how is Vayelech greater than Nitzavim. In order to do that, we're first going to have to understand how Yom Kippur is greater than Rosh Hashanah. So in Sif Hey, we're going to discuss Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, how they are different and how Yom Kippur is greater. The difference between Nitzavim and Vayelech, in other words, the commonality of Nitzavim and Vayelech is the Achdus. But there's going to be a difference also, a differentiation between Nitzavim and Vayelech in the idea of Achdus. But das is their Teichen Kanal, which Achdus is their theme. That Zayin Muvan, Leiten Unterschied zwischen Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur will be understood by differentiating between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur in them inyan von Tam Lichoni Aleichem, in the topic that unites them, which is the kingship of Hashem. Vidermon, as you mentioned earlier, that Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur have one theme, one underlying message. The Tam Lichuni Aleichem. The Tam Lichuni Aleichem for Rosh Hashanah. Tutzich Meshach the Asayis Meitshuva. This crowning Hashem as king, which begins on Rosh Hashanah, carries itself, gets accomplished, gets done during the Asayis Meitshuva, bis zu sein Shleimus ugmar b'Yom Kippur, till it is completed on Yom Kippur. Und der Far sagt man HaMelech HaKadosh ala Asayis Meitshuva, and therefore we say the words HaMelech HaKadosh, the king, because we're busy making the Eibishter into a king during all of the Asayis Meitshuva, and we complete that on Yom Kippur. So therefore Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur have the same theme, the theme of Tam Lichuni Aleichem, nor der Chiluk zwischen sie is. However, there is a difference. Rosh Hashanah wird aufgetan der Tam Lichuni Aleichem in Sheidish u'Makar Rishon. Rosh Hashanah, the kingship is accomplished in its original source. We begin the process by awakening or arousing within Hashem the desire and the will to be the king. Where does the desire and the will exist? In Atzmos. Und Eden haben bekeach zu peil sein das, der Farvas is eine Mushish in Atzmos. And also, how do Yidden have the power to do this? Because they are rooted in Atzmos. In other words, as Hashanah, we're going high. We're going to the highest levels to accomplish the Eibishter's Melucha. Und in die Asayis Meitshuva wird belosh nakabal aufgetan die Binyan von Tzviras Malchus. And during the Asayis Meitshuva, what gets done is the building. In other words, the building of Malchus. In other words, on Rosh Hashanah, we began the process. We turned to the Eibishter and we inspired him, we encouraged him, we awakened him, so to speak, to want Melucha. And then during the course of Asayis Meitshuva, we build that Malchus of Hashem, bis Yom Kippur. Until Yom Kippur, when their binyan of Malchus is Bishlei Musay, then the binyan, the creation of Hashem's kingship, is reaches its completion, und der Inyan von Tamlichuni Aleichem is then Meir Begilu Lamata, and then the Eibishter's kingship could shine down below. In other words, as we're going to see weiter again and again, Rosh Hashanah we're going to the highest places, Yom Kippur we're coming down to the lowest of places. And ultimately, as we're going to see, being able to take the highest of the high and bringing it down into this world, the lowest of the low, that's the great accomplishment of Yom Kippur. But let's keep that in mind as we go through this idea. Rosh Hashanah we're going to the Sheirah Shemakar Arishon, and Yom Kippur we're bringing it Lamata. Wie bald das Tam Lechuni Aleichem is ben Peil bis Asif Rosh Yom durch Achtos von Eden, and since the kingship of Hashem is being accomplished through Achtos, like we explained in Seif Gimel, is verstandig as behesem zum Chiluk Kanal zwischen Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur beneger Tam Lechuni Aleichem, that parallel, consistent with this difference that we are now making between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. In Rosh Hashanah, you're going to the Sheirah Shemakar Arishon, you're going to the highest levels. And in Yom Kippur, you're bringing it down into this world. Al derech zeh zeh der chiluk tussen zeh beachtos b'shaychus to the achtos von alle Yidden. You'll also see the same difference when you talk about achtos of Yidden. Since achtos is creating the melucha, so however the difference between Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and melucha, you're also going to see the same difference in the achtos. The achtos von alle Yidden in Rosh Hashanah is beikir v'zeh achtos is l'mayla and Sheirah Shemakar. The Achtos on Rosh Hashanah of Yidden is how it is rooted in its original source. Un Yom Kippur vert ot di Achtos nizgala lamata. And on Yom Kippur, this Achtos comes down to this world. Rosh Hashanah, we reach for the highest levels to create the Achtos, and Yom Kippur we're able to bring it down to this world. Just like we said about the Melucha of Hashem. Und das ist echt der Ilush Lebe Erech von Yom Kippur legabe dem Ilush von Rosh Hashanah, and this explains to us why Yom Kippur is on an infinitely higher level than Rosh Hashanah. The Achtos von alle Neshamas Yisrael in Zeir Sheirah Shemakar is nit b'derech Chidush Gamor or Nuftu. The Achtos of Rosh Hashanah, which is the Achtos of the Yidden, of the Neshamas Yisrael, the way they are in their original root and source, is not really a great accomplishment. Nor Valdorten is lechatchila nitakinat of pirut v'chlukei dargas. In the Sheirah Shemakar, in the source of neshamas, there's no room for differentiation. There's no room for different levels. Like a circle that has no beginning and no end. There's no part where you could say this is the top, this is the bottom, this is higher, this is lower. It's a circle. Wherever you look, it's part of the circle. Similarly, when you go to the Sheirah Shemakar and neshamas, there's no difference of neshamas. All neshamas are on the same level. So therefore, there's no real pirud. There's no real separation. Therefore, there's no need for achtos. In other words, the achtos is a natural achtos, not an accomplished achtos. The emissary of achtos is when you truly appreciate achtos, when you're able to take separation and turn that into unity. When you're able to accomplish unity in a place where there's various different levels. Und davke di achtos von pirud direkt us die emese achtos absolute de lamaila. And it is this achtos, the achtos of taking various different details, individuals, and bringing them together and forming an entity of oneness. This expresses the true achtos of above. Warum davke von achtos absolute nimmt sich der koyach. Because only when you have Achtos Abshuta, the highest level of Achtos, do you have the power to transform Rosh Hashanah, which is often referred to as Tura de Preda, the mountains of separation. Rosh Hashanah means there's a bunch of separate details, separate aspects that are each, sort of doing their own thing. And to transform that into Rosh Hashanah, that it belongs to Hashem, the oneness of the world. So in other words, even though we said that Rosh Hashanah you're going up, and Yom Kippur you're going down, but Yom Kippur by going down, you're bringing down the highest level of Achtos Apsuta. It's even higher than Rosh Hashanah. Because through the Achtos Apsuta is the only way that you're able to actually turn this world, the world of separation, into a world of oneness. So now what we've done is we're sort of veering back and forth. We started trying to explain Nitzav and Vayelech. We said that Nitzav and Vayelech are the idea of Achdus because it's a time of Tamlichuni Aleichem. Then we said that then we said that if we look at Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, both are the idea of Tamlichuni Aleichem, but for Rosh Hashanah you have to go to the highest source the Sheirush Umakir addition, and on Yom Kippur, you're taking all that high energy and you're drawing it down into this world. And then if you parallel that with the Achdus of Yidden, the Achdus of Rosh Hashanah is by reaching into the Sheirush Umakir of the Neshama. The Achdus of Yom Kippur is by bringing it down into this world, a place of Pirud, and yet transforming it with the Koyach of Achdus Apshuta into Yechidei Shalaylam, Yeshusa Yachid Yechidei Shalaylam, into a state of oneness. Before we go back to Nitzavim Vayelech to see how Vayelech is higher than Nitzavim, we're going to continue on this theme of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So far we have Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur in Melucha, we have Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur in Achdus. Now we're going to have Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur in Tshuva. That's Sivav. Other Chilek Kanal and the Achdus von Eden zwischen Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. This differentiation in Achdus of Yidden that we find between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, can also be reflected in the difference between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur when it comes to the idea of Tshuva. Rosh Hashanah Zakman it came viduyim. In Rosh Hashanah there's no viduy. Like in Yom Kippur you have the al-chet, you have viduy. You're focusing on your Avedas. On Rosh Hashanah you don't focus on the Avedas. In the Tzilis v'chulu von Rosh Hashanah wird nicht der Mann der viduy nicht wegen Chatoim und afilo nicht wegen der Slicha uf v'chapara. And the Tzilis of Rosh Hashanah we don't really mention sin. If we do, it's in a general context, certainly not in the context of viduy. Masha'inkin Yom Kippur is the Yom Haslicha the Kapara. Yom Kippur is the day of atonement. It's the day of forgiveness. Umezagt viduy v'chulu. And we focus on our Avedas, we say viduy. So why is there such a difference? Why is it taka that Rosh Hashanah we don't focus on the Chatoim and Yom Kippur we do? It's as follows. The Aveda for Rosh Hashanah is the Hazoza mitzad etzem neshama. Vizi is mushrish in atzmos. Rosh Hashanah the Aveda is to move the etzem neshama, or to move the person by awakening the etzem neshama, as it is mushrish in atzmos, as it is rooted in atzmos. Again, we're going to the highest of the levels. The etzem neshama, we touched upon this in last week's sikha as well. The neshamas are higher than Torah. So if you're going to the etzem neshama, which we called last week the bikurim of the neshama of the neshama is higher than Torah. Bikurim is before truma. So if you're going to the etzem neshama as it's mushrish in atzmos, you're higher than Torah. If you're higher than Torah, then there's no chatoim, there's no sin, because you're so to speak before Torah. Then Hebrew is done. Therefore, you're not going to talk about forgiveness. If there's no sin, then there's no forgiveness. We're not even going to discuss about the greatness of transforming sins, the deliberate sins, into merits, because we're higher than sins and merits. We're at a place that sins don't matter, merits don't matter. We're at a level where the Eibishter chooses Neshamas Yisrael not because they learn Torah, not because they're doing Torah, but because it's a Bechira Chavshis, it's free. In other words, to say it's not dependent on any reason. It's because that's what the Eibishter wants. But mitzad them, and is this level of Atzmus that's Beicher in the Yidden, that because of this the Eibishter wants to be their king, our king. So that's Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah we're dealing with the Sheirush, the Etzem HaNeshama, higher than Torah, higher than sin, higher than Tshuva, higher than Slicha v'Chapara. Yom Kippur aber, there the Sheirush Etzem HaNeshama l'nizgal l'mata. Like I said before, Yom Kippur we're coming back down to this world. So Yom Kippur we reveal this Etzem HaNeshama in this world, in dem Ort v'Shashayach HaToim, in a place that does leave room for sin. And in this place, in this world, a world of sin, that's where Yom Kippur comes and forgives and atones. Mitzad der Iskashos von Etzem HaNeshama and Elokus, was wird nisgale bei Yom Kippur, wird aufgetan die Kapara uslicha v'chatoim, because this bond of the Neshama with Hashem is revealed in this world. Therefore, there's forgiveness, just like we said before. But Achtas Apshuta, that Achtos Apshuta gives you the power to create Achtos out of Pirud. Similarly, the Etzem HaNeshama, the Iskashos of Etzem HaNeshama, gives you the ability to have Kapara, Slicha the Kapara, in a place where there's Chatoim. So Rosh Hashanah, you're higher than Chatoim. Yom Kippur, you're in a place of Chatoim, but you connect to the Etzem HaNeshama, the way it's Nizgala Lamata, the way it reveals itself into this world, which then you have both powers. You have the power of etzem and neshama, but the way it comes down into this world, so it could even affect sin and forgive and atone. Following this idea, it also adds explanation and makes it geshmak, makes it more understandable and enjoyable. What it says in Shulchan Aruch, and we actually say it in the Machzer, that on the eve of Yom Kippur, we have a minig that we are matir. We make it permissible to daven with the sinners, with the transgressors. In other words, you don't do it the rest of the year. You don't even do it Rosh Hashanah. Dafka Yom Kippur, you say, with the shus of Bezin Shalmatam, Bezin Shalmaila, Anumatirin liyispal lima v'ayanim, we make it permissible to daven with the sinners. Rosh Hashanah, ken men zich ufei ben hecher von dem ort wo v'ayanim und avedes dirinon. On Rosh Hashanah, we are able to rise above the place where sins or sinners affect. But because of that, we can't daven with them. Meaning to say, we can't connect with them in their form of a sinner. In other words, we go to a place where no Yid is a sinner. Every Yid is higher than Torah, higher than sin. But if we're going to see someone as a sinner, we can't daven with them because we are above that. Davka Yom Kippur. Just make sure just to repeat that. It doesn't mean that we can't daven with a sinner. It means we don't see them as a sinner. We see them from their etzem and neshama, which is beyond sin. But because we're coming from such a lofty perspective, if we were going to put them in a tzir of an avaryanim, if we're going to say there's an avaryan in our midst, then we couldn't daven with them. Because how can we connect an avaryan with a place where there's no avedis? But on Yom Kippur, we come to the true place where we turn everybody into aguda achas, into one bundle, into one unit. As a filu Yidden, even Yidden that are still in the form of sinners, become one with all Yidden. We could daven with them in one gathering. So Yom Kippur, we take the sins face on, because we're dealing with the world lamata, with this low down world where there's sin, where there's pirud, where there's separation from Hashem, and nevertheless we are able to bring down the highest levels into this world to bring achtos into this world, to bring tshuva into this world, and forgiveness and atonement from Hashem. And we could even sit, and even those people who are still in the level of avaryanim, we could sit with them, because the achdus is so powerful that it could even unite things that are different than each other. In Siv Zayin, he's going to carry on this idea of the uniqueness of Yom Kippur, of how there is a greater achdus on Yom Kippur, because of the fact that we're taking the highest levels and we're bringing them into Lamata, into this world. And he's going to say, even in the fact of how we observe Yom Kippur, that we don't eat and we refrain from various different amenities. Even in that aspect, you also see the idea of Achdus. Mitzadem was the Achdus the Yom Kippur. That nimshich in Eden, because the Achdus of Yom Kippur is being drawn down into a Yid the way he is in this world lamata. Therefore, this Achdus can also be expressed not just in soul level, on a soul level, but also on the level of the guf of the body. In the Chamisha, from Yom Kippur, in the talking in the 5 things that we refrain from doing on Yom Kippur, there's no difference between one Yid and the next. When it's talking about a positive mitzvah and an inyan of pu'ula v'asiyah is something that you have to do, there will be differences in how and the level of its fulfillment between great tzaddikim and simple people. But if you're talking about something that I'm refraining from doing, something that I'm staying away from, in not doing, in the lack thereof, there's no difference. In other words, if two people do something, they're going to do it differently. But if two people don't do anything, they didn't do anything to do it differently. In the not doing, everyone's the same. Similarly, in Pnimi Sonyanim, the Lechayesam Barav, der Chayes was kum from dem Rav Gufa, where we say that the idea of Yom Kippur is to give them life in the hunger, that through the Rav, through refraining from eating or from engaging in Gashmias, that is where their Chayes comes from, is Ba'alam B'Shavah. It's the same by everyone. Everyone is engaging in the Rav, and therefore the Chayes is the same by everyone. Mashenkin the Aveda von Rosh Hashanah. Even though generally speaking we're talking about Rosh Hashanah is beyond division, beyond differentiation, is das aber b'shas der Aveda tefillah v'chulu gufa. That's when the Yid is engaged in the Aveda. For example, he's in the middle of davening. Aber lachrei tefillah, wenn man geht weg von der Aveda. But after you finish davening and you go away from the Aveda of Rosh Hashanah, so to speak, and you engage in eating fatty foods and drinking delicious drinks. In other words, you're going now into the world of Gashmias. Is the achilu and shtiya. Eating and drinking, everyone does differently. How much they eat, what they enjoy, how much they enjoy it. Everyone is differently. If you're not eating, everyone's not eating the same. But once you start eating, everyone eats differently. Everyone enjoys differently. So even though we're saying that Rosh Hashanah is Achdus, and Rosh Hashanah, in a certain sense, is you're reaching the Sheidah Shemakar Haneshama, but once you walk away from that, and you go to actually eat something, all of a sudden there's division. Masha'en came by Yom Kippur, because the Achdus is so powerful that it encompasses and it penetrates even into this world and even into the various differences between people or things that exist in this world. Therefore, even when the things that affect the guf on Yom Kippur, which is what we don't do on Yom Kippur, even there you see Achdus, because everyone is not doing the same thing. So now that we understand the difference between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, although they are the same theme of Tamlichuni Aleichem, but nevertheless, Rosh Hashanah, you're going to the highest of levels, and Yom Kippur, you're bringing it down here, Lamata, and that's the greatest accomplishment, that you're able to take the highest of the high and bring it down into the lowest of the lowest, and that's the Uftu of Yom Kippur. Now we're going to understand the greatness or the advantage of Vayelech over Nitzavim. So we started out, L'chatchila, speaking about Achdus, that Nitzavim and Vayelech are both the idea of Achdus. In that we're going to see a maila, an advantage in Vayelech over Nitzavim, and that's Sif Ches. Das is that Ilu V'Shalei Be'erech and Paras Vayelech L'Gabe Paras Nitzavim, and now we'll also be able to understand how infinitely greater Vayelech is than Nitzavim. In Paras Nitzavim, that's Zech Wegen der Achdus von alle Iden, von Noshechem, Shiftechem, bis Chet V'Tzechat Shevim Echa. In Nitzavim, it discusses the Achdus of all Yidin. Vizi kumt mitzadem was they zayin and demot Nitzavim gemel of Hashem lekechem, because they are all standing before Hashem. But das meint as kula misalim lemayla b'makar chutzavim of Hashem lekechem. Now the Rebbe explains in Lekutei Torah that how do you reach Achdus in Nitzavim? Because it's lefnei Hashem lekechem, before Hashem, which means that you elevate all of the Yidin to the highest level where they are in the source of where they came from. And in that level, everyone is one, and therefore they reach a level of Achdus. Again, you're going up to the highest of levels. Parshas Vayelech aber red wegen der Achdus wie sie werden nisgala bei Yidin lamata. Vayelech is talking about the Achdus of Yidin as it is in a revealed way down in this world. Wie sie stehen bei der Gossam heim, as the Yidin stand in their own individual levels. Und das ist kavonas hakosov, and this is what the pasuk is telling when it says Vayelech Moshe. Moshe went by Yedaber Gemer Kol Yisrael. He spoke to the Yidden. Moshe Rabbeinu b'madregosei is gegangen and nimshach geworden by Yedaber. So all the Yidden v'zishtein zeir madrege. Moshe on his level went down to speak and to go to all the other Yidden on their level. Ober liidach, he does the zelba aliche v'mshachat shekol Yisrael b'shava. So on the one hand, you're going from Moshe to the other Yidden, but yet when Moshe goes to the other Yidden, he goes to everyone equally. Because this is what Moshe is accomplishing, is to connect the neshama above with the neshama lamata. And once you do that, then even though everyone is on a different level, you can bring them all together. Not by looking at their source, but by looking at them the way they are in this world, with their differences. And you could still unite them. So that's the uftu of Vayelech over Nitzavim. Nitzavim, you're going to a place where everyone is like milachatchila equal. Even though it says V'shechem Shiftechem Shevim Echa, because they will ultimately be different levels. But you go to their source, where in their source they're all the same level. Vayelech is where you bring them down in this world, where they are all in different levels and still they are ba'achdus. And we'll see this dichotomy, how on the one hand they're different and at the same time they're ba'achdus in Hakel itself. On the one hand, you see that the men come to learn, the women come to hear, the children come to be able to give a reward to those who brought them. But those as the achdus von Hakel. This shows us that we're dealing over here with different levels. Not like the achdus of Rosh Hashanah, which we said before, is everyone is the same, there's no difference. On the other hand, in this hakel, with the various different levels of people that show up, is the king, like we said before, is standing and he's reading, not teaching. He's reading by the melech, which is something that encompasses the entire kol, the entire congregation, the entire unity of the Yidden in an equal way. You're drawing down the oneness of all Yidden into the place where there's different levels on Ashon Ashon V'Taf. So much so that the parasha of Vayelech ends. Moshe spoke to the ears of all of the Yidden ad tumam, until the end. Literally, it means till the end of the shira. But the pirush apnimi in them is, but the deeper pirush is ad tumam is v'lashon tmimus v'shleimus, until the perfection and completion of the Yid von Eden. The Dibur Moshe v'Oznei Kol Kal Yisrael is not to the Etzem and Neshama Lamata. He's not just speaking to the Etzem and Neshama Lamayla, above, because that's not Atuma. That's just affecting above. In order for it to affect down below, no, this kumt up and peil tmimus u'shleimus and zekeches agluyim bis now levarim v'gidim. Moshe Rabbeinu speaks to all the Yidden and he draws that down, that achdus, into the Neshama the way it is in this world, into his keches agluyim, which is seichel and midas, into his evarim v'gidim, his limbs and his sinews. That's atumam. That's completion. When in this world, where the person is made up of multiple facets, and all Yidden, everybody is different. Everybody, and the world is made up of individuality and of Tura de Preda, of mountains of separation. Everything is so different on a basic level. And yet, the Achdus of Vayelech brings all that together, taking the Pirud and turning it into Achdus. So now we've answered our question. We now understand the underlying theme, the common theme of Nitzavim Vayelech, which is Achdus. We also understand that there's a difference between Nitzavim and Vayelech. Nitzavim focuses on the Achdus, the way it is above, in the Sheirush Shemakar HaNeshamas. And Vayelech focuses on the Achdus, the way it comes down into this world, where we transform Pirud, separation, into oneness. And this is consistent with the fact that Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur also have the same theme of Tamlichuni Aleichem. But on Rosh Hashanah, you're reaching into the Sheirush Shemakar Shalamayla to be able to bring down, to awaken the Eibishter's desire to be king. And on Yom Kippur, you're bringing that into this world, and you're transforming the world with it, that this world should become, the Eibishter should be king, and this world should become the possession of the one Eibishter Yechidah Shel Elam. Now in Ksiv Tes, he brings a very, very practical Hira from this whole seemingly lofty discussion. The Aseres Yimei Zayin Azman Mesugul to Meisav Zayin in Avas Yisrael. The Aseres Yimei Tshuva are a auspicious time to add an Avas Yisrael. When the gathering is not complete, as felt in the Achtos from the Aliyidin, there's a lack of Achtos. In Vos Veramatzev ze soll nor sein, meint das nicht nur as es fällt in a Prat, nur das is negeyat zum kloles dikin inyan von Tamlichuni Aleichem of ganz Klal Yisrael. It's not just missing a detail. Oh, we have everything set up, it's just we're missing a little Achtos. But the whole Tamlichuni Aleichem can't happen, because the Tamlichuni Aleichem is dependent on the Achtos. And we bow them to Yom Kippur, and since in Parshas Vayelech we're gearing up for Yom Kippur, darf die Avot zu jeden Eden sein. Nicht nur in a Nefen as a verguckt jenem Zra. As zet lechatchila nur der Tev shebei. Und der Far hat an Ave zu ihm und sich mesachet mit him. When you love another Yid, it can't be because you overlook the bad. That you don't see the bad, you only see the good, and therefore you love him. You say, oh, I don't see any bad in that person. I have no reason to not like him. I love him. I only see good in him. Sounds very lofty, but it's not good enough. Weist von deswegen a reis an Avetz ihm an a chesben. In this time of getting ready for Yom Kippur, even when you see the bad in the other person, you still love that other person because the love is unconditional. Was die Ave drückt sich aus in Eisaskus Gedela, wie Stadlos Yesera, zu helfen jenem Wattel sein dem Ra. And how do you show that love? How do you express that love? By getting involved and making an effort to help that person get rid of their Ra. He brings Notice 70 from Perek Lamed Beis, L'moshchan b'chevli avezes Ava, to draw them in with heavy string, heavy rope of love, to hopefully be makar of them to Teira and Avedis Hashem. And durch the Risaskus in Mivtza Avos Yisrael, in Diteg, and by getting involved in Mivtza Avos Yisrael in these days, is men zeichet to Tamlichuni Aleichem in merit, Tamlichuni Aleichem begolui, v'hat achsimu gmar chsim eteva b'yam HaKippurim, so eteva u'mesuka begasmus of Beruchnius, b'teva nirav anigla, there's a chsima, they were sealed, and a complete sealing on Yom Kippur for a good and sweet year, both begasmus and Beruchnius, in visible and in revealed goodness.